My name is Charlotte Hayes, but everyone just calls me Charlie. I'm 35 and I own the Everwood Manor, a property that has grown to become one of the most exclusive wedding venues in the state of Vermont. When my little sister, Olivia, announced her engagement last year, I was over the moon. Our family dynamics have always been challenging, to put it mildly, mostly because of my stepmother, Isabel. But I was genuinely looking forward to being part of my sister's celebration. As the wedding date approached, however, a feeling of dread began to creep in. Then, the phone call came. "You are being uninvited from the wedding," the planner stated, her voice completely devoid of emotion. "It's on the family's orders." I simply replied, "I see." She hung up, and I could almost hear the self-satisfied smile on her face. Less than 20 minutes later, she called back, this time in an absolute panic. "Miss Hayes, Charlotte, we had no idea you were the owner of the entire property." Before I explain how this wedding nightmare became the most significant turning point in my life, please leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to navigate your own family drama. When we were children, Olivia was like my little shadow. Despite our 6-year age difference, we were inseparable. I can still see her in my mind, a tiny toddler trailing after me everywhere with her worn, stuffed bear, desperate to join in whatever game I was playing with my friends. I truly never minded. Having a younger sister felt like having a built-in best friend who was absolutely certain I was the most amazing person alive. Our mother, Helen, was the one who cultivated that strong bond between us. "Sisters are friends for life," she would always say, and she made it a rule that any small squabble we had was resolved before bedtime. Mom was the very soul of our home, the warm, anchoring presence in our small house in a quiet Vermont suburb. She had a special talent for making our modest home feel like a palace, with curtains she had sewn by hand and Sunday dinners that somehow always stretched to accommodate any friends who dropped by unannounced. Everything came crashing down when Mom was diagnosed with a particularly aggressive form of ovarian cancer. I was 17 at the time. Olivia was just 11. The following 18 months were a confusing haze of hospital waiting rooms, whispered conversations between adults that would abruptly stop the moment I entered a room, and me trying desperately to maintain a sense of normalcy for Olivia while our dad, Robert, completely fell apart. It felt like I aged 10 years overnight. I found myself cooking meals, helping Olivia with her homework, and then driving to the hospital immediately after my own high school classes. When Mom finally passed away, it was as if someone had extinguished all the lights in our house. Dad simply retreated into his grief and his work, which meant the responsibility of being Olivia's mother essentially fell to me. I delayed my college plans for a year because I couldn't stand the thought of leaving her when she so desperately needed some form of stability in her life. I'll never forget those long nights, holding Olivia in my arms as she cried herself to sleep. We clung to each other for survival, and our shared grief created a bond that I was convinced was unbreakable, or so I thought. About 3 years after Mom's passing, Dad met Isabel at a corporate dinner. She was polished, impeccably organized, and she made it abundantly clear that she was eager to fill the maternal role that had been left vacant in our family. I was 20 years old and did my best to be cautiously optimistic. Olivia, then 14, was starved for a mother figure and warmed up to Isabel almost instantly. The wedding was a small, quiet ceremony, and I remember feeling a sharp, stabbing sense of betrayal on my mom's behalf, which was immediately followed by a flood of guilt. My dad had a right to be happy, and Olivia was about to start high school. She needed a woman in her life to guide her, so I pushed down my misgivings and tried my best to welcome Isabel into our family. The changes began almost immediately, but they were subtle at first. Isabel took a particular interest in Olivia. She would take her on lavish shopping sprees, arrange sleepovers with the daughters of her affluent friends, and enroll her in all the most prestigious summer camps. She always presented these things as what Helen would have wanted, a tactic that made it impossible for me to object without coming across as jealous or bitter. With me, on the other hand, Isabel was always just coldly polite. She dismissed my opinions on family decisions as immature, and my efforts to help around the house were suddenly never quite good enough for her. When I started talking about applying to colleges again, Isabel was surprisingly supportive, even helping me research schools, all of which happened to be conveniently located hundreds of miles away. By the time I was 21, I understood the game she was playing. Isabel wanted Olivia to be her do-over project, the daughter she could shape and mold into a reflection of herself. I was simply a living, breathing reminder of the family that existed before her, too much a product of my own mother to ever be remade in her image. After one especially bitter argument over plans for Olivia's birthday party, where every single one of my suggestions was systematically rejected, I made the painful decision to move out. I found a cramped apartment and began working any job in the service industry I could find. I was a waitress at a diner during the day, a bartender at a hotel in the evenings, and I picked up catering shifts on weekends throughout the wedding season. I was fiercely determined to build a life for myself, but I was just as committed to remaining close to Olivia. Isabel made that nearly impossible. My free weekends were suddenly never a good time for me to visit. My phone calls to Olivia were often cut short, or, as I began to suspect, monitored. Whenever I had a day off, Olivia's schedule would mysteriously become completely booked. Dad saw what was happening, but he consistently chose to maintain the peace rather than confront the issue. "Isabel is just being protective," he would say. "Just give her some time to adjust." Even with all those obstacles, I made sure Olivia knew I was always in her corner. I attended every one of her soccer games, her high school graduation, and every major school event, even if it meant I had to sit far apart from the rest of the family. I sent her care packages when she left for college and took her to lunch whenever she could sneak away from Isabel's watchful eye. All the while, I was building my own future. My time working in the hospitality industry had sparked a passion for event management. I noticed all the small details that went wrong, the client needs that were overlooked, and the logistical nightmares that caused so much stress. I started taking business classes at the local community college, built a network of vendors, and I saved every single dollar I earned. When Olivia called me last year to announce her engagement to James Croft, the son of a well-known investment banker, I was genuinely thrilled for her. At 29, she had recently graduated from law school and was beginning her career. James seemed like a great guy, and it was clear he was absolutely crazy about her. During a celebratory lunch, Olivia was practically vibrating with excitement about her wedding plans and mentioned that she had always fantasized about having a garden wedding. "I've always pictured myself getting married at a place like the Everwood Manor," she sighed, completely unaware of the smile spreading across my face. "But places like that are booked years in advance, and they cost a small fortune. I might be able to help with that," I said cautiously, not wanting to overstep. According to Olivia's texts, Isabel had already appointed herself the head wedding planner. "Really? You know someone who works there?" Olivia's eyes lit up with a glimmer of hope. For a brief moment, I considered keeping my success a secret. Isabel had spent more than a decade belittling everything I accomplished while elevating Olivia. But this was my sister, and making her happy was far more important than holding on to old resentments. "I more than know someone," I said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "I own the Everwood Manor." My journey to owning the Everwood Manor was a combination of relentless hard work and a single, incredible piece of good fortune. After 5 years of juggling multiple jobs and saving money with an almost fanatical devotion, I had managed to accumulate a small nest egg and a solid list of industry contacts. At 26, I was working as an event manager at a high-end hotel when I overheard a regular guest lamenting her family's old estate. "Everwood has been in our family for 100 years, but none of the younger generation wants the responsibility," she told her friend. "The upkeep alone is bankrupting us. We'll probably have to sell it to developers, but the idea of it being torn down for a bunch of condos is just devastating. I approached her table, introduced myself, and gently asked about the property. Everwood was a 12-acre estate featuring a stunning 19th-century manor house, expansive gardens that had fallen into disrepair, and a series of charming outbuildings. It had once been the jewel of the county, but had gradually descended into a state of elegant decay as the family's financial situation changed. The owner, a woman named Eleanor Vance, seemed a little taken aback by my interest, but agreed to let me view the property the following weekend. The moment I stepped onto the grounds, I knew it was a special place. Even with the overgrown gardens and the peeling paint, Everwood possessed a soul, a timeless magic that you simply can't manufacture. The way the sunlight filtered through the ancient maple trees, the hidden garden with its crumbling stone bench, the magnificent ballroom with its soaring windows. I could envision it all, perfectly restored to its former splendor. This could be the #1 wedding destination in Vermont, I told Eleanor, my voice filled with an excitement I couldn't suppress. The bones of this place are absolutely perfect. She was amused by my passion but remained skeptical. That would take a fortune, dear. Years and years of work. I have a business plan, I said, even as I was frantically crunching numbers in my head. Would you ever consider a seller finance deal? I can provide a down payment and I'll pay off the remainder as the business begins to generate revenue. To my utter astonishment, Eleanor was receptive to the idea. She loved the thought of Everwood being brought back to life rather than demolished. She mentioned that my passion reminded her of her own grandmother, who had treasured the estate. A few months later, we finalized a deal. The terms were strict. I would have to start turning a profit almost immediately. But I was ready for the challenge. That first year was absolute hell. I lived in a tiny cottage on the property to save every possible penny. I spent my days performing restoration work myself and my nights developing my business strategy. Every dollar I earned was funneled directly back into the manor. I began cultivating relationships with the best wedding vendors in the state, offering them discounted rates for photo shoots at Everwood to get the venue featured in bridal magazines. I leveraged my old hotel contacts to establish partnerships with luxury inns for out-of-town guests. Slowly but surely, Everwood was reborn. The gardens began to flourish again. The ballroom floors were polished to a mirror-like shine, and we carefully integrated modern amenities without compromising the historic integrity of the estate. By my third year of ownership, we were booking weddings 18 months out. By year 5, we had a waiting list and had been featured in national magazines as a premier destination venue. Throughout this entire process, I shared very little of my success with my family. Dad knew I ran an event business, but he was always vague on the details. Olivia believed I simply managed the property for a wealthy owner. And Isabel? She never cared enough to ask. I had stopped seeking their approval years ago. I found my validation in my flourishing business and the wonderful community of staff and colleagues I had built around me. So, when Olivia mentioned Everwood as her dream venue, I felt a complex mix of pride, amusement, and a touch of dread. Her reaction when I finally told her the truth was everything I could have hoped for. "You own Everwood?" she gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief. "The Everwood Manor? The one with the famous wisteria arch and that ballroom with the crystal chandeliers? Charlie, how did I not know this?" I just shrugged, trying to appear casual, though her genuine astonishment was a soothing balm to my heart. "You've been busy with law school and launching your career. And let's be honest, it's not like anyone in the family ever asks about my job." Olivia had the grace to look a little ashamed. I should have asked more. "This is incredible, Charlie. You did all of this by yourself?" "Every last bit of it," I confirmed, "and it would be my greatest honor to host your wedding there. Consider it my wedding gift to you and James." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. That's far too generous. A wedding at Everwood must cost a fortune. The package you'd want is about $80,000. I said, simply stating a fact. "But you're my sister. Your wedding should be at the most beautiful place in Vermont, and I just happen to know the owner." We both laughed, and in that moment, it felt like I had my sister back. She hugged me tightly, whispering, "Thank you," repeatedly. We spent the rest of the afternoon exploring the grounds, with Olivia gasping and pointing at every little detail. Watching her unadulterated joy, I allowed myself to hope that maybe, just maybe, this wedding could finally mend the rift that had grown between us. That hope was fleeting. The reality check came in the form of Isabel. Olivia insisted on bringing her and my dad to see Everwood the following weekend. Dad was genuinely impressed, clapping me on the shoulder with tears in his eyes and saying, "You really did good, kiddo." Isabel's reaction was different. "It's certainly rustic," she remarked, glancing up at the 200-year-old hand-hewn beams in the main hall. "I suppose that's a look some people are going for." I bit my tongue, reminding myself that this was for Olivia. "The historic character is what makes Everwood unique, but we've updated all the essential systems with modern amenities," I explained, trying to keep my voice professional despite the sting of her words. "Our clients appreciate the blend of old-world charm and contemporary comfort." "Speaking of clients," Isabel said, turning to Olivia, "I've already contacted Victoria Sterling to plan the wedding." "You remember Victoria, darling? Her daughter was in your ballet class. She handles all the significant events in the city." And so it began, the systematic campaign to edge me out of my own sister's wedding. Despite the fact that I owned the venue, my professional insights were treated as an annoying distraction. Victoria Sterling arrived at our first meeting with a portfolio of weddings that were all identical cookie-cutter events, safe, uninspired, and completely lacking in personality. She consistently referred to me as the venue representative instead of Olivia's sister, and made frequent comments about having to work within the space's limitations. "Actually," I attempted to explain, showing her our catalog from past events, "Everwood is incredibly versatile. We've hosted everything from massive traditional weddings to small themed gatherings. Whatever Olivia and James envision, we can bring it to life here." "We appreciate your enthusiasm," Victoria said with a dismissive little smile, "but I think we'll stick to what's tried and true. Now, about your list of required vendors." "We don't have required vendors at Everwood," I clarified. "We have a list of preferred partners who are familiar with the property, but our clients are welcome to bring in anyone they choose." "How quaint," Victoria said, her smile tightening. "Most high-end venues exercise stricter quality control." Throughout the entire meeting, Olivia remained mostly silent, her eyes darting between Victoria and Isabel whenever a decision was needed. I could literally see her excitement being drained away, replaced by a growing anxiety. When she did try to suggest something, like having the ceremony in our secret garden, Isabel would immediately veto it. "Oh, darling, outdoor ceremonies are so unpredictable. The grand ballroom is far more appropriate for a family of James's stature." By the time the meeting concluded, I felt like an outsider at my own property. As they were all preparing to leave, I managed to pull Olivia aside for a moment. "Are you happy with all of this?" I asked her gently. "Because this is your wedding, not Isabel's and not Victoria's. We can make Everwood into whatever you want." Olivia squeezed my hand. "I know, Charlie, and I appreciate it more than you can imagine. It's just, Isabel is just trying to help, and she knows all the right people. It's just easier to let her take the lead on a few things." I nodded, recognizing the old pattern, but I didn't want to add to her stress. "Just promise me you'll remember I'm here for you. For anything, literally anything." That night, Dad called and asked to meet me for coffee. I was hopeful he had seen what was happening and was planning to intervene. Instead, he asked me to be patient. "Isabel means well," he said, endlessly stirring his cappuccino. "She just wants Olivia's wedding to be perfect." "So do I pointed out. "That's the entire reason I offered Everwood for free." Dad sighed, and he suddenly looked much older than his 67 years. I know that, sweetheart. And it's an incredibly generous gift. But you know how Isabel is. I do, Dad, I said. She's been pushing me away since the day you married her. That's not entirely fair, he protested, his voice weak. She was just trying to find her place in a family that was already formed. It was a difficult time for everyone. I knew this conversation was futile. We'd had some version of it for the last 15 years. What are you asking me to do, Dad? Just try to go along with Isabel's plans when you can. Let her feel like she's a part of it. She's very invested in this. And what about when her plans are bad for the venue? Or when they're making Olivia miserable? Dad looked away. Try to compromise. Please, Charlie, for the sake of peace in the family. I agreed. Not because he was right, but because I loved him and I loved Olivia. I didn't realize at the time that I would be expected to compromise myself completely out of the picture. The exclusion began with small things. A cake tasting I was never informed about. A meeting with the floral designer that was rescheduled without anyone notifying me. Each time the excuse was something innocuous. Just an oversight, a simple miscommunication, a last-minute change. I tried my best to give them the benefit of the doubt, telling myself that wedding planning is always chaotic, even without a complicated family history. Then I started to notice a change in my text conversations with Olivia. Her messages, once filled with excitement, became short and formal. When I'd ask her to grab lunch to discuss the wedding, her replies would come hours later, full of vague excuses about her workload. Our easy sisterly banter was gone, replaced by the kind of polite distance you maintain with a work colleague, not the sister who once shared all your secrets. Swamped at work, can't make it, sorry, became her standard response. On the rare occasion we did manage to talk, Olivia seemed tense and distracted, constantly checking her phone as if she were expecting an urgent message. About 6 weeks into this process, I overheard a conversation that made everything horribly clear. I was in the ballroom with my maintenance chief, checking on a new lighting installation, when I heard Isabel's voice drifting in from the terrace, where she was sitting with Olivia. "Darling, I know you want to include Charlie," Isabel was saying in that calm, reasonable tone she had perfected over the years, "but you have to realize she's just jealous of your happiness. She's never even had a serious relationship, and now her little sister is having this huge, beautiful wedding. It's only natural that she'd want to control everything." "Charlie's not like that," Olivia protested, but her voice was weak, lacking any real conviction. "She's being so generous, giving us the venue." "Of course she is," Isabel said smoothly. "It's fantastic publicity for her business." "But have you noticed how she argues with every decision Victoria makes? How she's always trying to suggest something different from our plans? That's not being helpful, darling. That's a need for control." I just stood there, frozen. I was torn between marching out there and defending myself and just running away to process this staggering betrayal. My maintenance chief, sensing my distress, mumbled something about checking a circuit breaker and quickly left me alone with my thoughts. Isabel was twisting my intentions, painting my professional advice as jealousy and my gift to my sister as a cold business move. And the worst part was, it was working. I could hear the doubt in Olivia's voice, her wavering loyalty. I chose to retreat that day. I didn't want to make a scene at my own place of business. Looking back now, I can't help but wonder if confronting Isabel right then and there might have changed the course of everything that happened next. Then came the photos from the bridal party photo shoot. Olivia posted them online. There were her college friends, Isabel, and even my father, all smiling together in the garden pavilion that I had personally restored with my own 2 hands. There was no mention of my absence, no empty spot left to symbolize a missing sister, because that was another little detail I had learned about secondhand. Not only was I not the maid of honor, I wasn't even in the bridal party at all. The realization was a punch to the gut. It stung more than I wanted to admit. Despite our age difference, Olivia and I had always promised each other we'd be each other's maid of honor. It was a promise we'd made late one night after Mom's funeral, a whispered vow that we would always be there for each other's biggest moments, even if she couldn't be. That evening, I went to the official bridal shower, held at Isabel's country club. I never received a formal invitation, but Olivia's maid of honor, a girl named Brianna, told me I was, of course, welcome to come. I brought a gift I had put a lot of thought into, a beautiful silver locket. Inside, I had placed a tiny restored photo of our mother holding Olivia as a baby, with me, at age 7, proudly looking on. It was one of the only photos of the three of us together, and I had spent a good amount of time and money getting it professionally restored and miniaturized. At the shower, I was placed at a table in the back with some distant family friends, far from the main family table. When it was time to open gifts, Isabel sat right next to Olivia, meticulously writing down each gift and who it was from. When it was my turn, Olivia opened the box with a confused look that quickly turned to tears as she recognized the locket. "Oh," she said softly, her finger tracing the outline of our mother's face. For just a second, I saw my real sister again, not the polished, distant person Isabel was turning her into. Isabel quickly took the locket from her. "How thoughtful," she said, without even looking at me. "We'll find a special place for this at home." She set it aside on the table and immediately moved on to the next gift, a crystal serving bowl from one of her friends, which received a loud and gushing round of praise. As the party was ending, I overheard Isabel talking to two of her friends near the coat check, not realizing I was just around the corner. "It's all taken care of," she was saying, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Victoria has it handled. Charlie won't be a problem at the wedding." "Are you sure that's a good idea?" one of her friends asked. "I mean, she does own the venue." "The contract is signed," Isabel replied confidently, "and she would never do anything to ruin Olivia's special day. She'll get over it and accept the situation once it's presented to her." I slipped out before they saw me, my mind racing. What did "won't be a problem" mean? And what situation was I supposed to just accept? I tried calling Olivia that night, but it went straight to voicemail. I sent a text asking if we could get coffee the next morning, just the two of us. It went unanswered. My sense of dread was now a cold, hard knot in my stomach. Whatever Isabel was planning, she had successfully cut me off from both Olivia and my dad. I went to sleep that night with a terrible feeling of foreboding, never imagining that the next day would bring a confrontation that would either shatter our family for good or force us to finally face the truth. The call came at 9:17 on Friday morning, exactly 8 days before the wedding. I remember looking at the clock because I was waiting on a delivery of fresh flowers for another event, not a call from Victoria Sterling. "Ms. Hayes," she started with no greeting. Her voice was cold and professional. "I'm calling in regard to the Croft Hayes wedding next Saturday." "Yes?" I answered, putting down my coffee cup. Something in her tone set off all my internal alarms. "There has been a change to the guest list that I am required to inform you of." She paused, and I could tell it was for dramatic effect. "You're uninvited from the wedding. The family's orders." The words hit me like a physical force. Uninvited. From my own sister's wedding, at my own venue. I grabbed the edge of my desk to steady myself, glad that Victoria couldn't see the color drain from my face. "I understand," I replied, my voice miraculously steady despite the earthquake erupting inside me. "Good," Victoria said, and she couldn't quite hide the smugness in her voice. "The family feels this is for the best, for everyone involved. The contract for the venue itself remains in place, of course. Your staff will be expected to perform all services as agreed upon." "Of course," I echoed, my voice hollow. "Then we have an understanding. Goodbye, Miss Hayes." She hung up before I could say another word, not that I had anything to say. The phone slipped from my hand onto the desk as the full weight of it all crashed down on me. My own sister had just banished me from her wedding. No call from her, No explanation, just a cold-blooded dismissal from a third party. For a few minutes, I just sat there, completely still, trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. The pain was so intense it felt physical, a crushing weight on my chest that made it hard to breathe. Tears burned behind my eyes, but they wouldn't fall. I felt strangely numb, like I was watching this happen to someone else. Then, the business part of my brain, the part that had built a thriving company from scratch, started to kick in. Victoria had said, "Family's orders," not Olivia's orders. The difference felt significant. Was this Isabel's move, with Olivia's full consent? Or was Olivia being manipulated into something she didn't truly want? Either way, it hurt, but in very different ways. If Olivia had made this choice, our relationship was broken in a way I didn't think was possible. If she was being manipulated, then she was still my little sister, and she needed me to protect her, even from herself. And then there was the practical detail, the one Victoria and Isabel seemed to have completely forgotten. I owned the venue. I didn't just manage it. I didn't just work there. I owned it. Every single blade of grass, every historic floorboard, every crystal on the chandeliers was mine. The contract for Olivia's wedding was with my company, and it was signed by me as a formality, even though I had verbally gifted them the entire cost of the venue. This realization didn't bring me any feelings of revenge or pleasure, just a deep, hollow sadness. I had no intention of canceling my sister's wedding, no matter how terribly she was treating me, but their oversight showed just how completely they had dismissed me, not just as a sister, but as a person. In their world, I was just the inconvenient older sister, not a successful entrepreneur who literally controlled the ground they were planning to celebrate on. My executive assistant, Bethany, knocked on the door before peeking her head in. "Charlie?" The flower supplier is online too about that delivery schedule. She took one look at my face and her expression changed. "Are you okay?" "I've just been uninvited from Olivia's wedding," I said, the words sounding even more absurd when I said them out loud. "What? That's insane," Bethany protested. "After everything you've done for her? The venue alone is an $80,000 gift." "It's not about the money," I said quietly. "It never was." Bethany started to argue, but my desk phone rang again. I glanced at the caller ID, Victoria Sterling. It had been exactly 20 minutes since she'd hung up on me. I looked at Bethany and hit the speakerphone button. "Miss Hayes? Charlie?" Her voice was completely different now, syrupy and placating. "We didn't realize you own the entire venue. The family was under the impression you were a manager or perhaps an event coordinator here." The sheer absurdity of it almost made me laugh. And in 6 months of planning my sister's wedding at my property, none of you ever thought to ask? "There has clearly been a terrible misunderstanding," Victoria said, a note of desperation creeping into her voice. "The wedding is tomorrow. Perhaps we could all meet to discuss this." "I'll need to consider my options," I interrupted, refusing to make this easy for her. "I will be in touch." I hung up and looked at Bethany, whose eyes were wide. "Well, that was revealing," I said dryly. "What are you going to do?" she asked. It was the same question I'd been asking myself since the first call. What could I do? What should I do? The vengeful part of me wanted to cancel the whole thing, enforce some obscure clause in the contract, or demand full payment for the venue. But all of that would hurt Olivia the most, and despite everything, I just couldn't bring myself to ruin her wedding day. Nothing. Not yet, I decided. I need to figure out what's really going on before I make any moves. My cell phone started buzzing with a series of texts, 5 of them, one after another, from Isabel. I silenced my phone without even reading them. Whatever fire was burning on their end could wait. I needed to deal with my own. "Cancel the rest of my meetings today," I told Bethany, "and if anyone from my family calls the office, just take a message. Don't put them through." Once I was alone, I finally let myself cry. Years of trying to hold on to my relationship with Olivia. Years of trying to be the bigger person with Isabel. All of it ending in this one cruel, calculated act of exclusion. It felt like I was losing my sister all over again, but this time, it was by choice. I called my best friend, Chloe, who had been a witness to my entire family drama since we were in college. She listened to the whole story without saying a word, and then she responded with the righteous fury that I couldn't quite muster myself. "This is emotional abuse, Charlie," she said firmly. "Isabel has been isolating and manipulating Olivia for years, and now she's gone so far as to cut you out of a major life event that's happening at your own business. It's insane." "I know," I whispered. "But what do I do?" "What do you want to do?" Chloe asked gently. The question stopped me cold. What did I want? I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to hurt Olivia. But I did want the truth. I wanted to know, once and for all, if my sister had really chosen to do this to me, or if she was as much a victim of this manipulation as I was. I want to talk to Olivia, I realized, directly. No Isabel, no Victoria, no one else in the way. I need to hear from her what she really wants. "Then that's what you need to demand," Chloe said. "Use the venue as leverage if you have to." It's about time Isabel learned that she can't control everyone and everything. After we hung up, I looked at my phone. 3 missed calls from Victoria, 7 from Isabel, and 1 single text message from Olivia. "Please call me." No explanation, no apology, just those 3 words. I put the phone down without answering. For the first time in our lives, Olivia was going to have to wait for me. I needed to think through my next steps. This confrontation was going to either heal our family or break it apart for good, and I wasn't going into it unprepared. That night, sleep was impossible. I swung between heartbroken grief and cold, simmering rage. I played out a dozen different scenarios in my head, from complex strategies to simple, blunt ultimatums. By the time the sun started to rise, I was exhausted, but my mind was clear. I had come to a single simple conclusion. This wasn't about winning, it was about healing. The real question wasn't what punishment Isabel deserved, it was what kind of resolution would give Olivia and me a chance to rebuild what we had lost. With that clarity, my decision was made. I wouldn't use the venue as a weapon. I wouldn't demand a public apology or some dramatic scene. I would simply insist on an honest conversation with all the manipulation and pretense stripped away. If our family had any chance of moving forward, it had to start with the truth. As the sun rose over the gardens of Everwood, I felt a sense of peace. I had built this beautiful place from nothing. I could rebuild my relationship with my sister, too, but only if she was willing to meet me halfway. And if she wasn't, I would survive that loss, just like I had survived others. But I would know that I had done everything I could to save the thing that mattered most. By 8 o'clock that morning, I was showered, dressed, and driving toward my father's house. I felt a calm resolve that surprised even me. The storm of emotions from the night before had settled into a quiet determination. Whatever was waiting for me, I would face it with my head held high. The family home looked exactly the same as it always had, a perfect colonial with manicured lawns, giving no hint of the emotional war being waged inside. I pulled up behind Olivia's car and noticed that Isabel's SUV and Victoria's sedan were also in the driveway. The whole crew was here. Good. I wanted to address them all at once. My dad answered the door, his face a mask of anxiety. "Charlie," he said, stepping back to let me in, "we've been trying to call you." "I know," I said simply, walking past him into the living room where the others were waiting. Isabel was perched on the edge of a sofa, looking uncharacteristically flustered. Victoria stood near the fireplace, clutching her leather portfolio like a shield. Olivia was curled up in an armchair, her eyes red and puffy from crying. All 3 of them looked up as I entered, their faces a mixture of panic and shame. Charlie. Isabel was the first to recover, standing up and opening her arms as if she was going to hug me. Thank goodness you're here. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. I stopped just out of her reach. Has there? It seemed pretty clear to me. I was uninvited from my sister's wedding, which is happening at my own venue. What part of that did I misunderstand? Victoria stepped forward, her professional mask back in place. Ms. Hayes, as I was trying to explain on the phone, "I'm not here to talk to you," I cut her off without even looking at her. "You were just the messenger, right?" "I'm more interested in who sent the message." Isabel's face hardened for a split second before melting back into a look of concerned sorrow. "Darling, nobody wanted it to come to this. We were just trying to lower Olivia's stress levels. You two haven't been agreeing on the wedding plans, and with tomorrow being so important—" "Stop it," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "No more games, Isabel. Not today." My father finally came into the room, hovering nervously between his wife and me. "Charlie, please." Isabel was only trying to help. "Was she?" I asked, turning to him. "Is that what you call it? Uninviting your own daughter from her sister's wedding? You call that helping?" "It was a miscommunication," he insisted, his voice weak. "Nobody knew you actually owned Everwood. We thought you just worked there." The absurdity of that claim left me speechless for a moment. I've owned Everwood for 5 years. I built that business from the ground up. How could you possibly not know that? "You never talk about your work," Isabel interjected smoothly, "and you've always been so independent. We just assumed a management role was as far as you had gotten." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "That's convenient. And it's a complete lie, but it doesn't matter. What matters is what happens now, with the wedding." Victoria stepped forward again, her desperation obvious. "The wedding is tomorrow. There's no time to find another venue of Everwood's quality. Ms. Hayes, Charlie, surely we can work something out." I ignored her. Instead, I walked over and knelt down by Olivia's chair. My sister wouldn't look at me. She just stared down at her hands, which were twisted together in her lap. "Olivia," I said softly, "I need to hear it from you. Do you want me at your wedding?" The room went silent. Isabel started to say something, but my dad, for the first time, held up a hand to stop her. It was a flash of the backbone I thought he'd lost years ago. Olivia's shoulders started to shake. "I don't know what's real anymore," she whispered. "Isabel said you didn't want to be involved, that you were just doing this for publicity for your business. She showed me texts where you said the wedding was taking up too much of your time." "What texts?" I asked, completely baffled. "Olivia, I never sent anything like that." "She has them on her phone," Isabel insisted, reaching for her purse. "I can show you." "Those are fake," I said with absolute certainty. "Check the phone number they came from." "It won't be mine." Olivia finally looked up at me, her eyes searching my face. "Is that true? You never said you were tired of my bridezilla behavior." "Never," I said firmly. "I have been trying to get a hold of you for weeks." My calls go to voicemail. My texts get one-word answers. I thought you were the one who was pushing me away. "I never got any calls," Olivia said, confusion spreading across her face. "Isabel said you were too swamped with other events to talk directly. She said all communication had to go through Victoria." We both turned and looked at Isabel, whose perfect composure was finally starting to crack. "This is absurd," she huffed. "I was protecting you, Olivia." "Charlie has always been jealous of our relationship. She was trying to make your wedding all about her." "By offering her $80,000 venue for free?" I asked, my voice dripping with disbelief. "That's a funny way of being selfish." "You own Everwood?" Olivia asked, fresh tears welling in her eyes. "Completely? You don't just work there?" My heart broke at the genuine shock in her voice. "Yes, Liv. I own all of it. I've been telling you about my business for years in my emails, during our lunches. Didn't you get them?" I I never got those emails, Olivia said slowly as the horrifying truth started to dawn on her. Isabel has been managing my personal email for all the wedding stuff. She said she was filtering out the spam. All eyes in the room turned to Isabel, whose expression had shifted from concerned to cornered. I was trying to hold this family together, she said defensively. Charlie abandoned us years ago. She never cared about family until Olivia's wedding could be used to benefit her business. I left because you pushed me out, I exclaimed, finally losing my carefully controlled composure. You systematically isolated me from Dad and Olivia from the day you moved in. That's not true, Isabel insisted, turning to my father. Robert, tell her that's not true. But Dad was looking at Isabel with a new expression, as if he was seeing her for the first time. You told me Charlie was too busy for family dinners, he said slowly. You said she kept turning down our invitations because her business always came first. I never got any invitations, I said quietly. And you told me Charlie thought my law career was a waste of my potential, Olivia added, standing up now, that she laughed at me for working at a firm instead of trying to start my own business. I have always been so incredibly proud of you, I told Olivia, my voice thick with emotion. I tell everyone that my sister is a brilliant lawyer. The room fell silent as 15 years of lies and manipulation unraveled in a matter of seconds. Victoria Pierce stood by the fireplace, a forgotten bystander to the family implosion. Isabel's carefully constructed world was collapsing, and she knew it. This is all very touching, she said, her voice turning to ice as she dropped the concerned act. But it doesn't change the fact that the wedding is tomorrow. Whatever your issues are, surely they can wait until after Olivia's special day. Actually, I said, standing up to my full height, they can't. Because here's my ultimatum. I will host Olivia's wedding at Everwood as planned, but only on my terms. Amanda made a small noise of relief, but I held up a hand to stop her. First, I want 30 minutes alone with my sister. Right now. No Isabel, no Victoria, no one else. Second, Isabel will have no role in the wedding day itself. My staff will handle everything according to Olivia's wishes. Her real wishes, not anyone else's. And third, I will be wherever Olivia wants me to be tomorrow. As a guest in the front row or as a part of her bridal party. The choice is hers. This is outrageous, Isabel sputtered. After all the work I've put in... The work you've put in, I interrupted coldly, has been focused on one thing, cutting me out of my sister's life. That ends today. I turned to my father, whose face was a storm of shame and dawning realization. Dad, I suggest you take Isabel and Mrs. Sterling to get some coffee. Olivia and I have to talk. For a second, I thought he was going to fall back into his old habit of avoiding conflict at all costs. But instead, he nodded firmly. You're right. Isabel, Victoria, let's give the girls some space. Robert! Isabel protested, but for once, he didn't back down. Now, Isabel, he said, his voice quiet but full of an authority I hadn't heard in years. We have done enough damage for one day. As they walked out, Isabel practically shaking with rage, Victoria looking completely shell-shocked, and my dad with his shoulders slumped in defeat, I turned to face my sister. For the first time in over a decade, we were truly alone, with no one's influence hanging in the air between us. I'm so sorry, Olivia whispered as the front door clicked shut. I had no idea. I had no idea what she was doing. I just opened my arms, and she collapsed into them, sobbing, just like she used to when we were little girls. We just stood there for a long time, both of us crying, both of us starting the long journey back to each other. We have a lot to talk about, I said finally, pulling back to look at her, and a wedding to fix. Olivia managed a weak, watery smile. Where do we even start? With the truth, I said simply, all of it, no matter how much it hurts. And for the next half an hour, that's exactly what we did. In the living room where we'd spent so many hours as kids, We began the long overdue process of mending our relationship. We sat side by side on the sofa, the physical closeness helping to close the massive emotional gap that Isabel had so expertly created. "I really thought you were pulling away from me," Olivia confessed, wiping at her tears. "Every time I tried to talk to you about the wedding, Isabel would tell me you were too busy or that you weren't really interested. She made it sound like you thought it was all beneath you. And I thought you were letting her push me out of your life," I replied. "The few times we actually talked, you were so distant. It felt like you didn't want me around." "She told me you thought my wedding was tacky and boring," Olivia said, shaking her head as if she couldn't believe she'd fallen for it. "She said you were just letting me use Everwood to make yourself look good." "I was so honored you wanted to get married there," I assured her. "It felt like the one perfect thing I could do to be a part of your happiness." As we compared stories, a truly sick pattern emerged. For years, Isabel had been intercepting our communications, filtering information, and twisting every word to fit her toxic narrative. She had masterfully played on my own insecurities about not belonging in the new family, and on Olivia's deep-seated anxiety about living up to her older sister. "I can't believe I never saw it," Olivia said, her voice filled with genuine remorse. "Looking back, all the signs were there. Isabel is very, very good at what she does," I said, surprisingly without any anger. "And she's had a long time to practice. We can't beat ourselves up for not seeing it." "But I should have trusted you," Olivia insisted. "After Mom died, after everything we went through, how could I ever believe you didn't care about me?" I squeezed her hand. "The same way I believed you would willingly cut me out of your wedding." We were both being manipulated by an expert. The mention of the wedding brought us crashing back to the present crisis. It was less than 24 hours until the ceremony. We had to figure out what to do. "What do you actually want for tomorrow?" I asked Olivia, looking her straight in the eye. "Not what Isabel wants, not what Victoria planned. What do you and James want? It's your day." Olivia hesitated. She had become so used to deferring to others that just voicing her own opinion seemed like a challenge. "I'm not even sure anymore," she admitted. "So much of it was just Isabel making a decision and me nodding along." "Close your eyes," I suggested. "Picture yourself walking into Everwood tomorrow. What does your perfect day look like? What are the things that really matter to you and James?" Slowly, and then with more confidence, Olivia started to describe her vision. Not the stuffy, formal ballroom ceremony Isabel had demanded, but the intimate garden wedding she had first dreamed of. Not the fussy 7-course dinner Victoria had booked, but a more relaxed party where people could dance and mingle. Not the boring string quartet, but the lively jazz band that James absolutely loved. As she talked, her voice got stronger and more certain. I grabbed a notepad and started taking notes, my mind racing, calculating what we could realistically change in such a short amount of time. Some things would be hard, but my staff was the best in the business. Others would mean calling in every favor I was owed. And most importantly, Olivia concluded, opening her eyes with a new fire in them, I want my sister to be my maid of honor, right where she should have been all along. My pen stopped moving. "Are you sure?" "Brianna has been planning on this for months." "Brianna is Isabel's goddaughter, and she's barely my friend," Olivia said with a firmness that stunned me. "She was just another one of Isabel's decisions that I went along with. I want you standing next to me, Charlie. It's what Mom would have wanted." The mention of our mother brought a fresh wave of tears to both of our eyes. I could almost feel her in the room with us, her gentle spirit guiding us back to each other. "Then that's exactly what we'll do," I said, taking Olivia's hand. "But we have a hell of a lot of work to do if we're going to pull this off by tomorrow morning." When Dad returned with Isabel and Victoria, they found a completely different scene. Olivia and I were huddled over my laptop at the dining table, already deep in the chaos of replanning. The change in Olivia was stark. She was sitting up straight, speaking with authority, and she didn't flinch when she made eye contact with Isabel. "We've made some changes," Olivia announced as they walked in. "The wedding is still happening at Everwood, but it's going to be very different." Victoria's professional composure cracked, and a flash of pure panic crossed her face. "Changes?" "But everything has been confirmed. The vendors, the schedule will all be adjusted," I finished for her. "My team is already on the phone making it happen." Isabel's eyes narrowed. "Olivia, darling, you can't possibly rearrange an entire wedding in a single day. Think of James's family. Think of the guests." "I am thinking of them," Olivia replied, her voice steady. "And I'm going to make sure they attend the wedding that James and I actually want, not the one you orchestrated." Dad put a hand on Isabel's arm as she started to protest again. "I think we should listen to Olivia," he said quietly. "It is her wedding after all." The next 12 hours were an absolute blur. We moved our command center to Everwood, where my incredible team jumped into action like a special ops unit. Years of dealing with last-minute wedding emergencies had made them experts at this exact kind of chaos. "The garden ceremony is no problem," my head of landscaping confirmed. "We were already prepping it as a rain contingency plan." She tactfully left out the part about how Victoria had dismissed the idea from the beginning. "The jazz band James wanted is available. They had a last-minute cancellation," my entertainment coordinator shouted, hanging up her phone. "They're thrilled to be playing at Everwood." One by one, every piece fell into place. Vendors that I had spent years building relationships with came through for me, moving schedules and making substitutions. My kitchen staff completely reworked the menu to fit Olivia's vision, creating a relaxed yet elegant dining experience. Through it all, Olivia was right there with me, making decisions with a confidence that grew by the hour. It was like watching her come back to life. With every choice she made, she seemed to get stronger, as if reclaiming her wedding was helping her reclaim her own identity. Isabel tried several times to get back in control, alternating between sickly sweet concern, "Darling, you must be exhausting yourself with all these changes," and thinly veiled threats. "James's mother will be appalled by this casual affair." Each time, Olivia stood her ground, sometimes with me backing her up, but often completely on her own. Victoria Sterling, ever the professional, adapted to her new, much smaller role with a kind of grudging respect. "I will require the updated master timeline as soon as it's available," she requested stiffly. "You'll be in charge of coordinating guest arrivals and transportation," I told her. "My team will handle everything else on site." As evening fell, James arrived with his best man to see what was going on. His reaction was pure, unadulterated joy. This is what we wanted all along," he exclaimed, grabbing Olivia and spinning her around. "The garden, the jazz band. How did you do this?" "Charlie," Olivia said simply, smiling at me over her fiancé's shoulder. "She made it all happen." James walked over to me, his face full of genuine gratitude. "I had no idea you owned this place," he said, shaking my hand. "Thank you for everything. This is going to be the wedding we dreamed of, not the stuffy society function it was turning into." His sincere thanks confirmed what I already suspected. Isabel's manipulations had been hurting not just me and Olivia, but James as well. The wedding had been stolen from both of them. As midnight approached, the big pieces were all in place. My staff would work through the night to handle the details, but the new, authentic wedding was ready. Olivia and I stood on the terrace overlooking the gardens, completely exhausted, but deeply satisfied. "I can't believe we did this," she said, her voice full of wonder. 24 hours ago, I was dreading my own wedding. Now I can't wait." "That's how it's supposed to be," I said, putting an arm around her. "It's your day, not anyone else's." Olivia leaned her head on my shoulder, a simple gesture so full of childhood memories that it made my heart ache. "And you'll be standing right next to me," she said, "where you belong." "As long as you're sure it's what you want," I said, still a little cautious after so much deception. "It's what I've always wanted," Olivia said firmly. "Isabel just made me forget." As the first light of dawn started to break over the horizon, we stood in silence. The garden below us was transformed, with tiny, twinkling lights woven into the flower beds and a simple, elegant archway positioned perfectly where the morning sun would hit. In just a few hours, Olivia would marry James right there, in a setting that was a true reflection of them. "Do you remember watching the sunrise with Mom?" Olivia asked softly. "She'd wake us up super early and we'd sit on the back porch with hot chocolate. She said every sunrise was a reminder that you always get a fresh start," I recalled, my throat tightening with emotion. "That no matter how dark the night gets, the morning always comes." "This feels like that," Olivia said, gesturing toward the brightening sky. "A fresh start. For us, for our family." As the sun's first rays touched the gardens of Everwood, the place I had poured my soul into, I finally let myself feel a flicker of hope. Maybe this whole painful ordeal had been necessary. Maybe from the ashes of Isabel's lies, something real and healthy could finally grow. "We should try to get at least an hour of sleep," I said, ever the practical big sister. "It's going to be a long day." Olivia nodded but didn't move. "Charlie, thank you. Not just for this, for fixing the wedding, but for not giving up on me, even when it looked like I had given up on you." I pulled her into a tight hug, feeling the last of the broken pieces in my heart start to mend. "Sisters are forever friends," I whispered. Mom was right about that. The morning of Olivia's wedding was bright, clear, and perfect, as if the universe itself was giving its approval. Despite getting almost no sleep, I woke up with a sense of calm and purpose that I hadn't felt in years. Today wasn't just about a wedding, it was about reclaiming a family. As the newly appointed maid of honor, I joined Olivia in the bridal suite. The other bridesmaids, a mix of her law school friends and a few cousins, greeted me with a combination of surprise and genuine warmth. Brianna, the now former maid of honor, was understandably cool, but I couldn't hold it against her. She was just another pawn in Isabel's game. "I have something for you," I said to Olivia as the makeup artist was finishing up. I handed her a small, worn velvet box that I had kept in my safe for years. Olivia opened it and gasped. Inside lay our mother's simple pearl earrings, the ones she had worn on her own wedding day. "I thought these were lost," she whispered, tears threatening to ruin the artist's work. "Mom gave them to me before she died," I explained, my own voice cracking. "She made me promise I'd wear them at my wedding and that I'd make sure you wore them at yours." Something borrowed and something old, all in one. The makeup artist quietly stepped aside as Olivia's composure broke. "She knew," Olivia sobbed. "She knew she wouldn't be here." "But she made sure a part of her was," I said, gently helping her fasten the delicate earrings. "She's with us today, Liv. I can feel her." The door opened and my dad walked in, stopping short when he saw us hugging. "Everything all right in here?" he asked, his voice hesitant. "Everything is perfect," Olivia told him, dabbing her eyes without smudging a single lash, a skill all brides seem to magically acquire. Charlie brought Mom's earrings. Dad's eyes went to the pearls, and they immediately misted over. "Your mother would be so proud of both of you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And I am too. Especially you, Charlie, after everything and the way you stepped up for your sister. It's what family is supposed to do," I said simply, though hearing those words from him meant the world to me. "Yes," he agreed, with a new firmness in his voice. "It's what real family does." The emphasis was not lost on me. Something had finally shifted in my dad. When it was time for the ceremony, I helped Olivia with her final adjustments and then took my place at the front of the garden path that was now her aisle. The transformation of Everwood was breathtaking. The jazz quartet played softly as guests found their seats under a canopy of flowering dogwood trees. Richard waited under the arch, his face absolutely beaming. From where I stood, I could see Isabel in the front row. Her face was a carefully neutral mask, but it couldn't hide the tight set of her jaw. When Olivia appeared on my dad's arm, a collective gasp went through the crowd. She looked radiant. She had switched to a simpler, more elegant gown than the fluffy monstrosity Isabel had picked out, and her hair was adorned with tiny white flowers instead of a tiara. The ceremony itself was short and deeply personal, filled with vows that Olivia and James had written themselves but had been told were inappropriate. As they promised to love and support each other, I glanced over at my dad, who had taken his seat, leaving a deliberate, empty space between himself and Isabel. Another small but significant shift. At the reception, I gave my maid of honor speech. When we were little, I began, looking out at all the happy faces, Olivia used to tell everyone she was going to marry a prince. Our mom would just smile and say that the important thing wasn't finding a prince, but finding someone who would treat her like a queen. Richard. Watching you two together, I know Mom would approve. You see the incredible woman my sister is, and you cherish her for her intelligence, her kindness, and her spirit. I raised my glass. To Olivia and Richard, may your life together be built on honesty, respect, and the courage to always choose love, especially when it's hard. Olivia's eyes were shining as she mouthed, "Thank you," to me. The double meaning of my words was not lost on her, or on my dad, who put a hand on my shoulder as I sat back down. Later, during the father-daughter dance, Dad surprised everyone. After a minute of dancing with Olivia, he asked the band to pause, and he took the microphone. "Today isn't just about gaining a son," he said, his voice clear and strong. "It's about celebrating both my daughters." He turned to me and held out his hand. "Charlie, may I have this dance?" As we swayed to one of Mom's favorite songs, Dad spoke quietly, just for me. "I failed you, Charlie. For years, I chose keeping the peace over standing up for the truth, and you were the one who paid the price. I am so sorry." "It's not too late to change things," I told him, feeling a wave of forgiveness wash over me. "Starting now." "I've already started," he replied firmly. "Isabel and I are going to have a very long talk when we get home. Things can't go on the way they have been." I simply nodded, grateful for his resolve. Near the end of the night, Olivia pulled me back to the little garden alcove where we had watched the sunrise. "I can't thank you enough," she said, "not just for saving my wedding, but for showing me what was happening. For years, I felt like I was going crazy, always second-guessing myself." "That's what that kind of manipulation does," I said gently. "It makes you question your own reality. But you broke free, Liv. You stood up for yourself when it counted." "Only because you showed me how," she replied. "You could have used this whole situation to get revenge, and no one would have blamed you. But you chose to heal our family instead. Revenge would have felt good for about 5 minutes," I admitted. "And then it would have destroyed any chance we had of ever getting back to this. Some things are worth more than being right." As we rejoined the party, I thought about the lesson I had learned over the past 48 hours. By choosing compassion over retaliation, I hadn't just saved a wedding, I'd opened the door for real healing. The road ahead for our family wouldn't be easy, especially with Isabel. But for the first time in 15 years, we were operating from a place of truth. In the months that followed, our family began the slow, messy work of rebuilding. Dad and Isabel started counseling. Olivia and James returned from their honeymoon and were firm about setting new, healthy boundaries. And I found myself slowly letting down the walls I had built around my heart. Perhaps the most surprising development was Olivia's growing interest in Everwood. As a lawyer who had now experienced a crash course in event planning, she had a unique perspective. 6 months after the wedding, she came to me with a formal proposal to become a partner in the business, using her legal skills to help me expand while she scaled back her hours at the firm. "Are you sure about this?" I asked her. "Working together could be complicated." I think it's perfect because of our history, she countered. We both know how vital honest communication is. Besides, Mom always said we made a great team. And she was right. Our skills complemented each other perfectly, and our renewed bond made us a formidable pair. Looking back on the wedding that almost tore us apart for good, I'm amazed at how close we came to losing each other forever. What I know for sure is that standing your ground doesn't always mean you have to burn everything down. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is offer a path to healing instead of demanding revenge. The lies and manipulation only had power because they were hidden in the dark. Bringing everything into the light, as painful as it was, allowed the truth to finally set us free. And if my story resonated with you, I'd love it if you hit that subscribe button and maybe share it with someone in your own life who needs to hear that healing is possible, even after years of pain. Just remember, it is never too late for a new sunrise. Thank you for listening, and I wish you all the courage in the world on your own journeys. End of story.